so the first thing I'm doing is I'm taking a sheet of the A Lady's Diary paper, and I am just trimming it down to about 11.5 by 11.5, and this is just because I have a shadow box I'm wanting it to fit inside of, and it measures 12 by 12, so I need it to be a little bit smaller than that. This is a Crafter's Workshop mask from my stash. I'm a mask junkie. I love to use them. And I'm just going over this one with some homemade texture paste and just focusing on the areas where I'm going to cluster my elements and not really going outside of that area. And I've got a scrap piece of paper here. I always save all of my scraps, no matter how big or how small, because I will always find a way to incorporate them into a project. And this, I'm just tearing it down into smaller strips. I do believe this is from Les Romantiques paper line. And then I do it off camera. I tear some of the Secret Garden paper into strips too, so I can have brown and pink ones. And I'm just going to adhere those down. I'm using Fabri-Tac because I'm going to be doing a lot of painting and misting onto this layout, and I really want it to stay down well, and I don't think hot glue would hold up quite as well as the Fabri-Tac will. So I'm just alternating them, doing a brown strip and then doing a pink strip, still touching the brown one, just kind of in the areas where, again, I'm going to cluster all of my elements at, and it just creates really pretty background texture. And I'm taking my craft knife now and my mat, and I want to have some lace coming out of my page. I don't like to just glue the lace down on top of my paper. I kind of like to have it coming through the outside of it. So I'm just tearing a little hole here, and then I'm going to distress up the sides of my edges so it's not like a clean cut finish, and I'm just going to have my lace coming out of this little opening here. And then I'm going to cut one down at the bottom as well, because I like to tear things open and then either cross stitch them back up or safety pin them up, just anything to make it look really distressed and old. And the lace I'm using is just some really pretty black lace from my stash. So I'm just playing around with it, trying to see about how big I need the piece to be, and just kind of tucking it in my little hole from the back of it. And I'm just going to use hot glue to adhere this down. Fabric, pretty much, you don't really need a strong adhesive, so for the most part, if I'm using fabric or paper flowers, I'll just use my hot glue gun to adhere it down. And I've got some chipboard pieces here from Imaginarium Designs, and the sentiment is there's no place like home, and the like home was attached to the bottom of it, and I just cut those out separate so I could place them in a different area on my layout than the first part of it. And I'm just using some pink acrylic paint to paint these, and I always do like a pouncing method. I'm never one for seeing brush strokes on anything. I like to either dab it or sponge it or just kind of pounce on top of it like that right there. And now I'm taking all of my metal elements. I've taken a bunch out of my stash, and I'm just kind of whitewashing certain areas. I don't want to cover everything up. I love metal, and I want it to still show through on top of all of my spraying. So I'm just kind of selectively going around and hitting random areas of it. And that way your sprays will take to it differently. The parts with the gesso will look different than the parts that don't have any on there. So it just creates a lot of texture and variation. And I'm taking some Stays On ink now, and I'm going to use my Graphic 45 stamps. This is one of the Les Romantiques ones, Hampton Art stamps. And I'm just stamping on top of that pink just to give it like some text in the background, and then the little butterfly wings as well. And then I'll go back on top of that with gesso just to kind of tone it down so it's just not so stark black on there, to kind of make it all blend well. And this is a little one from, I think, Old Curiosity Shop, the little bottles with the labels. It's one of my favorite stamp sets ever. It's so versatile. I love using the little label parts. So I'm stamping on that, and then I'm also inking the edges as well. And now I'm taking the insides of that honeycomb piece from Imaginarium Designs, and I'm just going to gesso these, and then I'll ink the edges of those as well. And now I'm taking some of my sprays and paints from my stash, and I like to kind of control where they're going. I'll still do some spraying on top when all of my elements are down, but for now I want it to look like there's a lot of splatters and a lot of drips. And in order to control that, you can just use a paintbrush instead of just trying to, blot it down on your paper and let it run down. That way, you can keep the mess out and still get the effect that you are wanting. With the lighter colors, like the pinks and stuff, you don't really have that problem, but definitely when you're using blacks and browns, I just kind of like to be in charge of where my drips are going. And I love to just dip my paintbrush in the bottles and then just kind of flick it with my finger, and it creates really pretty droplets all over. I love to do that technique. And now I'm going in with just a brownish pinkish color, and I'm just kind of accenting where I already went with those strips, staying in those same areas, because a lot of this will get covered up with my embellishments, but anywhere where there's a gap or where the embellishments end, I definitely want the drips to be showing. I find the thing with mixed media is that you do a lot of background work, and then, maybe a lot of it will get covered up, but it's just really important for me to, where it is going to show through, everything's nice and completed and textured and misted and just a lot going on. And this is just a darker brown color. So once I put it on, I'll kind of blot the excess off so it doesn't get too dark, and it just gives you a really shadowy effect where the drips are. And now I'm just spraying some of the pink as well. It's just a really light color pink. I've got a picture here of me and my grandmother. She is my heart, she is my world, and I love her so much. And I printed this picture out onto a transparency, and then I backed it on a lady's diary paper. It was like a postcard piece, so the script is showing through. And now I'm just matting it onto a couple of different layers of paper. I'll do this pink one first, and I don't really measure. A lot of times I'll just kind of eyeball it, because if you're distressing the edges of it really well, like I do with pretty much everything, then if it's not perfectly cut, you're not going to notice at all. Okay, and when I first cut off my paper in the beginning from 12 by 12 to 11.5, I saved my little strips. I'm not kidding you when I say I save every scrap of paper, including the top part that says the graphic 45, the part that has the barcode on it. I save everything. I think it all looks really cool on projects, especially anything mixed media. It just looks really funky and cool. So I'm cutting those into little banner strips, and I'm just going to distress those up a little bit. And I'm going to have those coming out from behind my photo, and I definitely want the graphic 45 part to show. And I'm going to be using Fabri-Tac to adhere pretty much everything down, because it doesn't dry immediately like hot glue does, and it's much stronger, and then it gives me some movement too. If I put something down and I'm not happy with where it's at, I can still move it a little bit and kind of have it go where I want it to go. So I'm just going to tuck all of my little banner pieces in and out of around my photo, and then kind of coming down the bottom part as well. And that strip of paper there, the back side of the paper I used, was actually my color inspiration for the piece. It's like pinks and browns and creams, and just a really pretty color combo. So that's what everything was pretty much based off of. And I just pulled every paint and spray from my stash that kind of went with that theme. Okay, now I'm just pulling out a piece from the A Secret Garden paper line, and I wanted some more of that green tone to show through. So I'm just matting my photo one more time on top of this one. And again, I'm just going to eyeball it and just roughly cut around it, and then distress that up as well. I'm not big on any clean edges. Everything gets distressed and gessoed in my world. And I'm just taking those little honeycomb hexagons from Imaginarium Designs, and I'm just adhering them down randomly, and I put a few down now and then I go in and add some more later on. And then I'm taking the negative piece there and I'm going to start gluing that down. I'm just going to use Fabri-Tac again because I can place it down, and if it's not exactly how I need it to be, I can still, it gives me about 20 minutes of time to, you know, change my mind, I guess, on where I want things to go. Nothing's permanent. But when I am doing mixed media collages or canvases, layouts, anything where I'm layering a ton of embellishments, I will always grab like my iPad or my camera and snap a picture. And that way I can refer back to it, because once you take everything off, you know, sometimes you can kind of forget where you originally had everything at. So that's a very helpful way for me to remember how I wanted things to go. And you'll see me using a combination of Fabri-Tac, E6000, and hot glue. I love to use all three of them, and then when things are needing to dry quickly, hot glue is obviously the go-to. So I think it's pretty well known in the community to use E6000 and then a little bit of hot glue at the same time, so that way it stays stationary while the really strong adhesive is going to dry. And I'm taking this hinge here, and I originally was going to keep it closed, but I changed my mind, and I just kind of opened it up. I'm putting E6000 on one side, and then the hot glue on the other. And I'm going to use the Fabri-Tac or E6000 again to adhere down my sentiment up here at the top of it. And I have this door knocker here that I absolutely love, and I'm going to use E6000 again, hot glue too, to adhere this one down over here to the side. And it had a big bauble on the bottom of it, which I took off, but I will be attaching that to the bottom of the honeycomb. These are some petaloo flowers that I have cut in half, one smaller than the other one, and I'm just kind of tucking them down there at the end, almost like it was lace coming on the bottom of that sentiment. And I've got some more petaloo flowers. These are absolutely beautiful. They're my favorite petaloo flowers to date. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they are just absolutely beautiful. So I'm just kind of tucking those in. And I have a little Tim Holtz drawer pull, and I'm using a scrap piece of paper. Again, you can see another scrap that I kept. I do not waste my graphic 45 paper. And I just stamped my little stamp there. It was the butterfly one from Le Romantique. And it says butterfly number there, so I'm just putting that on the inside of the Tim Holtz pull and using E6000 to adhere this one down. And I'm just clustering my flowers all together, gluing some a little bit on top of the other one just so it's nice and layered and looks well together. Sometimes it's a struggle to get flowers to cluster how you want them to, so I found by just gluing them on top of the other one a little bit, it kind of gives the effect that you're going for. And now I'm playing with the bottom part. I'm going to put the rest of my sentiment down there, and I'm also going to kind of stitch up the rip in the paper that I created, and I'm using Tim Holtz trinket pins to do that. And I usually just poke 2 holes with my X-Acto knife so that it inserts easily and I don't rip my paper, and then I just kind of tuck it in. And you can either glue them down how you want them to stay. I usually just let them do whatever they want and just leave them there. Okay, now I'm taking a little washer from my stash. I always tend to raid my honey's shop and take lots of yummy metal bits from there. He usually has just like a treasure chest in there of all this good stuff, and he's made a rule now that I can't take anything without asking him, because I will just go in there and it's just free reign on taking all the metal yumminess. So if your husband has a shop, check it out and take some of his tools and stuff. They will look really good on your mixed media projects. So I'm just tucking some more things in up there, a little half of a metal flower, and just tucking it beside the photo. And that's another Tim Holtz plaquette. His products go great with anything mixed media. And that's a little light bulb, again, just using E6000 to adhere that down. Okay, now I'm going to take some gesso and just kind of whitewash my flowers and go over the paper a little bit, and just really like a lot of texture, and the whitewashing just really makes everything look really soft and pretty. So I'll whitewash it before I spray, and then I usually do it again afterwards to kind of re-highlight certain areas. And the fun part is spraying. It's so relaxing and therapeutic for me to do projects like this. So I definitely encourage everybody to try doing some mixed media work if you haven't. It's just really, really relaxing and fun. It's just, you're free to get artistic and nothing has to be perfect. I had forgotten to cover up my photo, so definitely cover up your photo with either like a baby wipe, or I'm just using a paper towel there. So I'm just going in with those same colors, pinks and browns, and I'm going to pull out a deep green that kind of matches up with the paper from the front side of this one that inspired the whole piece. And just kind of start spraying all the way around, and then you'll see me using my paintbrush again too to kind of control the darker colors. I mean, you're free to spray as much as you would like, but I have just found I feel better and more confident if I have control over where the dark colors are going. I'm just flicking the paintbrush again, dipping it in there, and just kind of getting some little splatters all over my page. And anytime you're going in between colors, just heat set, that way they don't all blend together and turn like a mucky color. You can kind of keep everything defined in separate colors. And this green color just matches that paper, the little strips of paper perfectly. It's super pretty. And if you get spray down and you don't like how it looks, don't give up on it, because you can always fix a problem you made either by painting over it, or as soon as you put it down or spray it, just try to blot up as much as you can. And you can pretty much tone down any mistake that you've ever made. That's the beauty of mixed media. You're free to make mistakes though, and just have fun with it. When I'm using the black, you'll see me blotting a lot, just so it's not too crazy dark. So I'll kind of rub it down with my paintbrush and then blot up the excess immediately. And again, just doing some little splatters all over my paper randomly. I'm taking my butterfly stamp from Les Romantiques, and I'm just using frayed burlap distress ink and just stamping butterflies randomly throughout there, kind of coming in and out of all of my elements. And I've got these little sprigs here. I'm big on using natural elements on my projects. So I'm always going out to like the woods around our house and getting little vines or sprigs of flowers, dried things out, or going to Michael's in their floral department or Hobby Lobby. They have a great variety of things to use in your projects. And it just gives it a really pretty feel and fills out your sprays and your flowers and makes everything look really nice. So I'm just kind of tucking those in and out, figuring out where I want them to go. And you can see there it kind of comes in like a big bouquet, and I'm just cutting out different sizes of the little sprigs out. Okay, so my last step here is I'm just going back over it again with some gesso in certain areas just to kind of highlight it and tone down the spraying. And that is basically it, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the start to finish tutorial. I definitely encourage everybody to try some mixed media, break out your graphic 45 papers, and just have fun with it. And if you have any questions at all, just leave me a comment down below.